The first time my new neighbor asked if there was room in my bed, she was standing in my hallway at 1:17 in the morning, barefoot, soaked from the knees down, holding a dead houseplant like it was a wounded soldier. I had known her for exactly 9 hours, long enough to know her name was Claire, long enough to know she drank gas station coffee with the seriousness of a woman negotiating with life itself, and long enough to know that when she looked at me with those tired green eyes and asked, "Is there room in your bed?" my answer was going to change everything about the quiet little life I'd been pretending to enjoy. My name is Ryan Keller. I was 32 years old, divorced for 2 years, and I had built my days around work, takeout, and the kind of peace that looks healthy from a distance, but is really just loneliness with clean countertops. I worked as a project manager for a small renovation company in Asheville, North Carolina. Old houses, crooked floors, stubborn plumbing, people with Pinterest boards, and unrealistic budgets, that was my world. I liked fixing things because wood, tile, and busted pipes were honest. They didn't tell you they loved you in April and decide by November that marriage felt too heavy. So when apartment 3B finally got rented after sitting empty for 6 months, I didn't care much. At least I told myself I didn't. Then Claire moved in on a humid Thursday afternoon. I first saw her from my doorway struggling with a box labeled kitchen/maybe taxes, which seemed like a cry for help and a financial confession at the same time. She was wearing jeans, a faded blue t-shirt, and her hair was twisted into one of those messy knots that looked accidental but somehow made her prettier than anyone had a right to be while sweating through a move. She glanced over and caught me watching. "Either help," she said, "or pretend you weren't judging my packing system." I leaned against my doorframe. I was admiring it. Takes courage to put taxes near silverware. It's called emotional balance. I'm Ryan, 3A. Claire, 3B. And this box is heavier than my last relationship, so if you're offering... I don't think I offered. You opened your door. In the South, that counts. I should have shut the door and gone back to my leftover Thai food. Instead, I carried the box inside. Her apartment smelled like cardboard, lemon cleaner, and rain from the storm clouds gathering outside. She had almost no furniture. One green velvet chair, a stack of books, 3 lamps, and a mattress still wrapped in plastic leaning against the wall. "You moving in alone?" I asked, then immediately hated myself for asking it because it sounded too personal. Claire gave me a look over her shoulder. "That depends. Are you taking a census or checking for competition?" I almost dropped the box. She laughed, and something in my chest, something I had kept packed away better than any of her dishes, shifted. "Sorry," she said. "I get sarcastic when I'm exhausted. I get quiet. That sounds healthier. It's less entertaining." She smiled at me then. Not a polite neighbor's smile. A real one, quick and crooked, like she hadn't meant to let it happen. That was the first moment I noticed she was beautiful. Not in the obvious way people use when they don't want to describe someone. She was beautiful in pieces. The tiny scar through her left eyebrow, the way she tucked loose hair behind her ear even when it immediately fell out again. The steady intelligence in her face, like she was always reading the room and deciding how much of herself it deserved. I helped her carry up 6 more boxes before the rain started. By the last one, we were both damp and breathing hard in the hallway. She leaned back against her door and said, "If you're this helpful with every new neighbor, I'm going to have to assume there's a dark secret." "There is." Her eyebrows lifted. "I own a label maker." Claire pressed a hand to her chest. "That's not dark. That's marriage material." The word hit me wrong. Not because she meant anything by it, she didn't. It was just a joke tossed between 2 strangers standing too close in a hallway that smelled like rain and cardboard. But my face must have changed because her smile softened. "Sorry," she said quietly. "Bad joke?" "No, just old history." She studied me for half a second, longer than strangers usually do. "I've got some of that too." For a moment, neither of us looked away. Then thunder cracked over the building, loud enough to rattle the windows, and the lights flickered. Claire pointed at the ceiling. "Please tell me this charming old building isn't held together by vibes and landlord optimism?" "Mostly landlord optimism." "Wonderful. I just signed a 1-year lease with a man who described water pressure as spirited." I laughed. She did too. That should have been it. A nice meeting, a little banter, a strange spark I could ignore because I was good at ignoring sparks before they became fires. At 9 that night, I was at my kitchen table reviewing cabinet measurements when I heard a thud through the wall, then another, then Claire's muffled voice. No, 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 absolutely not. I stood up. A second later, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, Claire stood there holding a towel, her cheeks flushed, her hair falling loose around her face. I'm sorry, she said. I hate being this neighbor on day one, but do you know anything about radiators? It's July. I know, that's part of why I'm concerned. I followed her into 3B and found water spreading across her bedroom floor from an old pipe near the baseboard. Not a dramatic flood, but enough to soak the edge of her mattress wrapping and turn 2 cardboard boxes into papier-mâché. Shut-off valves probably in the basement, I said. She stared at the water, then at me. Of course it is. Because why wouldn't my first night here include a basement? I'll go. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I've known you 9 hours, Ryan. You seem very nice, but I'm not sending a man I just met into a basement on my behalf like the opening scene of a documentary. Fair. We went down together with my flashlight because the hallway lights had started flickering again. The basement smelled like dust and old paint. Claire stayed close enough that her shoulder brushed mine on the stairs. I told myself it was because of the dark. Then she slipped slightly on the last step and grabbed my forearm. Her hand was cold. Her grip was strong. You okay? I asked. Fine, she said, but she didn't let go right away. I found the valve and turned it until the pipe groaned. The water stopped upstairs, or at least I hoped it did. Claire exhaled. You do realize you've now ruined my plan to remain mysterious. You had a plan? Yes, move in quietly, be elegant, own curtains. You arrived with a box called kitchen, maybe taxes. And yet the mystery remained. By the time we got back upstairs, the storm had broken wide open. Rain hammered against the windows. Claire's bedroom was usable if you had a mop, a fan, and the emotional resilience of a saint. Her mattress, though, had taken the worst of it. The plastic wrap had torn during the move, and one corner was soaked through. She stood in the doorway staring at it. For the first time all day, the jokes left her face. I can sleep in the chair, she said. I looked at the green velvet chair, which was pretty but clearly designed by someone who hated spines. No, you can't. I'm not taking your bed. I have a couch. She turned to me. Ryan. Claire. I'm serious. So am I. Something passed between us then. Not just politeness, not just neighborly decency. It was the sudden awareness that we were alone in her half-unpacked apartment during a storm, both pretending the air hadn't changed. She hugged the towel against her chest. I was supposed to be gone by morning. I blinked. Gone? Her mouth tightened like she regretted saying it. I mean, I was going to decide tonight if I could actually stay here. Why wouldn't you? She looked around at the boxes, the wet floor, the mattress, then finally at me. Because starting over sounds brave until the first night comes, she said. Then it just feels like sleeping in a strange room with all your mistakes stacked around you. There it was. The thing beneath the sarcasm. I knew that feeling too well. The first night after my ex-wife left, I had sat on the floor of my own living room because the bed felt too large and too honest. Nobody tells you silence has weight until you're trapped under it. I stepped closer, not enough to crowd her, just enough to let her know I wasn't going to make her carry the moment alone. You don't have to decide your whole life tonight, I said. Claire looked up at me. That sounds like something a man with labeled storage bins would say. I contain multitudes. Her laugh was soft this time. Then the power went out. The apartment dropped into darkness except for the gray pulse of lightning through the windows. Claire made a small, startled sound, and without thinking, I reached for her hand. She took mine. Not grabbed. Took. Like she had been waiting for permission. We stood there in the dark, rain hitting the glass, her fingers fitting into mine with a kind of quiet that felt more dangerous than thunder. After a few seconds, she whispered, "Is there room in your bed?" My heart kicked once, hard. I could have made a joke. I could have hidden behind manners. I could have said the couch was fine and kept both of us safely on our own sides of the wall. Instead, I heard myself say, "Yes, Claire's hand tightened around mine. Then I added, before fear could talk me out of honesty, but only if you don't leave tomorrow. The next flash of lightning lit her face just long enough for me to see her expression change. Not shock, not embarrassment. Hope. And then someone pounded on her apartment door. The pounding came again. Claire's hand jerked in mine, but she didn't let go. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked. "At 1 a.m. during a storm?" she whispered. "Only if my bad decisions learned how to knock." I stepped toward the door, but she moved with me, still holding on. "Ryan," she said softly. I stopped. In the dark, I could barely see her face, but I could feel the tension in her fingers. "If it's my ex," she said, "don't do anything heroic." That sentence told me 3 things at once. 1, Claire had not moved to Asheville just for the mountain views. 2, she was scared enough to say it out loud. 3, some very stupid part of me already wanted to be heroic for her. Instead, I squeezed her hand. "What do you want me to do?" She went quiet. Not because she didn't know, because maybe nobody had asked her that in a long time. Another knock rattled the door. "Claire?" a male voice called. "It's Mark from downstairs, water's coming through my ceiling." Her shoulders dropped with relief so fast I almost felt guilty for noticing. "Not my ex," she breathed. "Unless your ex is named Mark and lives under you." "He's not, and if he did, I'd move to the moon." She opened the door. Mark from 2B stood in the hallway wearing a raincoat over striped pajamas, holding a mixing bowl against his chest. Water dripped into it at irregular intervals from his own ceiling, apparently enough to make him both wet and deeply offended. "Oh," he said, looking between us. "Did I interrupt something?" "No," Claire said. "Yes," I said at the same time. Claire turned her head slowly toward me. Even in the outage-dark hallway, I could see one eyebrow lift. I cleared my throat. "I mean, we were dealing with the pipe." "Right," Mark said, sounding unconvinced in a way I respected. We explained the shutoff valve. Mark explained his ceiling. The storm explained itself by throwing rain at the windows like gravel. By the time I went downstairs with Mark to check the damage, Claire insisted on coming too. She walked beside me in the stairwell, close enough that the back of her hand brushed mine. "Just so we're clear," she whispered, "when you said yes out there, what exactly were we interrupting?" My attempt at being honest. "That sounds dangerous." It was. "And the part where you told me not to leave tomorrow? That was the dangerous part." She glanced at me, and for 1 second the storm, the water, Mark's soggy ceiling, all of it faded. "You barely know me," she said. "I know. I could be terrible. You labeled a box kitchen, maybe taxes, I already assumed." Her laugh slipped out before she could stop it. Then she nudged my shoulder with hers. It was small. Almost nothing. It still felt like a choice. We spent 20 minutes making sure the leak had stopped. Mark was more dramatic than endangered, and once he had 2 bowls under the ceiling spots, he announced he would survive if the building and God allowed it. Back upstairs, Claire's apartment smelled damp and defeated. Mine, across the hall, was dark but dry. She stood between our doors like the hallway was a border crossing. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know. I can sleep in the chair." "No, you can't." "I can sleep on the floor. I have hardwood. I can develop a new personality and enjoy discomfort." "Claire." She stopped. I opened my apartment door and stepped aside. "Come in." For a moment, she only looked at me. Then she walked past. My place was cleaner than it had any right to be at 1:48 in the morning. The power was still out, so I found candles in a kitchen drawer because, yes, the drawer was labeled, and lit 3 of them. Warm light flickered across the walls, softening everything. Claire wandered to my bookshelf while I grabbed towels and a dry t-shirt from the laundry room. "You alphabetize by author," she said. "It's a system. You're a deeply suspicious man. I also separate screws by size." She looked over her shoulder. "Ryan Keller, stop flirting so aggressively." I nearly dropped the shirt. She smiled then, and the room changed again. Not into something safe, into something alive. I handed her the shirt. "Bathroom's on the left. You can change if you want. I'll take the couch." Her fingers brushed mine as she took it. "You keep saying that." Because it's true. What if I don't want you on the couch? My pulse lost its rhythm. Claire's face went pink, but she didn't look away. I don't mean... She swallowed, then gave a small, embarrassed laugh. I mean, I trust you, which is ridiculous because I met you today, but I do. And I don't want to be alone tonight. The honesty in her voice hit harder than any flirtation could have. I leaned back against the counter, giving her space because I wanted to step closer too badly. Then I won't leave you alone. Her eyes softened. She disappeared into the bathroom. When she came out wearing my gray t-shirt and her damp jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders, every reasonable thought I'd ever had left, quietly through the nearest exit. The shirt fell to mid-thigh. She tugged at the hem. Don't say anything. I wasn't going to. You have a face. I've been told. It's saying things. My face is very rude. It's saying I look good in your shirt. I looked at her then. Really looked. You do. The teasing faded. Claire held my gaze and the candlelight caught the green in her eyes. Thank you, she said, but it sounded like she was thanking me for more than the shirt. We ended up sitting on my bed above the covers, backs against the headboard, a respectful foot of space between us that somehow felt more intimate than touching. Rain filled the silence. The candle on my dresser flickered shadows across her bare knees. She told me her ex's name was Daniel, that he hadn't hit her, not once, and she always felt like she had to lead with that so people would understand why leaving had been hard. He just made me smaller, she said, one comment at a time. My laugh was too loud. My job wasn't impressive. My friends were bad influences. My clothes were trying too hard. She stared at her hands. Eventually, I started editing myself before he could. Anger rose in me, clean and sharp. But she didn't need my anger. She needed me to hear her. So I said, I like your laugh. She looked at me. And your clothes trying too hard. That one box did most of the work. I also like that you boss strangers into carrying things. Neighbors, she corrected. I boss neighbors. I smiled. Right. Her foot nudged mine under the blanket, not an accident. I don't know if I can stay, she whispered, but when you said you wanted me to, I wanted to believe you. I turned my hand palm up on the space between us. Claire looked at it. Then she slid her hand into mine. This time, there was no storm excuse, no dark basement, no sudden fear. Just her choosing to touch me. I meant it, I said. Her thumb moved over my knuckles. You shouldn't make offers like that to women who are trying very hard not to fall apart. I'm not offering because you're falling apart. No? No. I looked at her, heart open and stupid and awake. I'm offering because I liked you before I knew you needed anything. She went still. Then Claire leaned over that careful foot of space and kissed my cheek. Not my mouth, not yet. But her lips stayed there 1 second longer than necessary, warm against my skin. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. That's your warning, she whispered. For what? For tomorrow. Her mouth curved. I might stay. Claire did stay. Not in the dramatic way movies make it look. There was no sunrise confession, no sweeping music, no sudden certainty that life had rearranged itself for us. There was just morning light through my blinds, my neck stiff from sleeping upright, and Claire's head on my shoulder. At some point in the night, the careful space between us had disappeared. Her hair smelled faintly like rain and my laundry detergent. Her hand was curled loosely around the front of my t-shirt, like she had reached for me in her sleep and decided I was worth keeping. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Then she stirred, blinked awake, and looked up at me from 2 inches away. For one unguarded second, she smiled. Then her eyes widened. Oh no, I frowned. That's not the reaction a man hopes for. I slept on you. I noticed. All night? Most of it. Did I drool? I'm too much of a gentleman to answer. She groaned and tried to sit up, but her hair caught on my shirt button. We both froze. Then she started laughing, soft and embarrassed, while I carefully untangled one curl. This is how I die, she said. Strangled by intimacy. You survived the basement. You can survive my button. You don't know that. When I freed her hair, my fingers lingered for half a second near her cheek. I meant to pull back. I didn't. Claire noticed. The room went quiet. Her smile faded into something warmer. Sleep had softened her edges. She looked less like the woman who had teased me in the hallway and more like someone standing at the doorway of her own heart, deciding whether to let me see inside. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she whispered. I wanted to kiss her, badly. But wanting wasn't the same as taking, and I had learned, too late in life maybe, that tenderness mattered most when it had somewhere to stop. So I brushed my thumb once, lightly over the back of her hand and said, "Coffee?" Her expression changed. Not disappointment exactly. Challenge. "You're offering coffee instead of kissing me?" My brain stopped functioning. I was being respectful. Very noble. She tilted her head. Also mildly annoying. "You want me to be less respectful? I want you to be brave enough to ask." There it was. Claire reaching for me without shrinking. Not needing rescue. Not hiding behind jokes. Choosing. My chest tightened. "Can I kiss you?" I asked. Her answer was immediate. "Yes." The kiss was gentle at first, barely more than a question. Her lips were warm, soft, a little hesitant until my hand rose to her cheek and she leaned into me with a breath that sounded like relief. Then she kissed me back. Not like a woman falling apart, like a woman coming back to herself. Her fingers slid to my jaw. Mine settled at her waist over the old gray t-shirt she'd borrowed, and the simple fact of touching her made the room feel too bright, too small, too full of everything I'd refused to want. When we broke apart, she stayed close. "Well," she said, breathless, "that was terrible for my plan to remain mysterious. I'm starting to think the mystery was mostly cardboard." She laughed against my shoulder and I wrapped an arm around her because she moved there first. We made coffee in my kitchen with the power finally back on. Claire sat on the counter wearing my shirt and a pair of borrowed sweatpants rolled 3 times at the ankle, watching me like I was doing something more interesting than measuring grounds. "You're very precise," she said. "It's coffee. It's a beverage, not a hostage negotiation. You said you drink gas station coffee. I'm trying to save you." "Careful, Ryan. Improve a woman's standards too much and she may never leave." I turned, mug in hand. "Good." The word landed between us. Claire's teasing softened. "Good," she repeated. I walked over and handed her the coffee. "Yes." She took a sip, then closed her eyes. "Okay, unfortunately you're useful." High praise. Don't get arrogant. Too late. Her foot swung lightly against my thigh, a small touch. A quiet claim. For breakfast, I made eggs and toast. She accused me of making first date eggs. I told her if this was a date, she had terrible manners because she hadn't brought flowers. So she hopped off the counter, disappeared across the hall, and came back 10 minutes later holding the dead houseplant from the night before. "For you," she said solemnly. I stared at the brown leaves. This is deceased? It's symbolic. Of what? My dating history. I laughed so hard I nearly burned the toast. We ate at my tiny kitchen table while sunlight replaced the storm. It should have felt strange. 2 near strangers sharing breakfast after a night that had turned too intimate too quickly. Instead, it felt easy. Dangerously easy. Afterward, Claire went back to her apartment to call the landlord, shower, and assess the damage. I offered to help. She lifted one finger. No fixing my whole life before noon. I was offering towels. And emotional remodeling. I saw it in your eyes. Occupational hazard. She stepped closer in the hallway. I like that you want to help. But I need to know I can choose staying without feeling like I owe you for it. That stopped me. Because she was right. I had spent years being needed in ways that turned into resentment. My ex-wife used to say I made myself indispensable and then acted hurt when people depended on me. At the time, I thought that was unfair. Now, with Claire looking at me like she hoped I'd understand, I wondered if it had also been true. So I nodded. Okay? Her brows lifted. Okay? I'll bring towels, I'll drink coffee, I'll kiss you again if invited. But I won't take over. Her mouth curved. That last one sounded difficult for you. Agonizing. Good. She leaned up and kissed me quickly, just a soft press of her lips to mine. over before I could properly react. Growth should hurt a little. By early afternoon, her apartment had fans blowing, towels down, and every window open. Her landlord promised a plumber and used the phrase, "these things happen," which made Claire put him on speaker so I could silently witness her facial expressions. At 4, she stood in the middle of her living room, hands on her hips. "I'm staying," she announced. My heart did something embarrassing. "Yeah?" "For now," she said quickly. "Not because of you. Of course not. Because I refuse to be defeated by plumbing. Noble. And because..." She looked at me then, the bravado thinning. "Because last night was the first time in a long time I didn't feel stupid for wanting something soft." I set down the box I'd been carrying. "What do you want, Claire?" Her eyes held mine. "A real first date," she said. "One where I'm not damp, homeless, or wearing your sweatpants." I liked the sweatpants. "You would. You separate screws by size." "Dinner tonight?" She smiled. "Ask properly." I stepped closer. "Claire, will you go on a date with me tonight?" "Yes," she said, "but I'm choosing the restaurant." "Why?" "Because if I let you choose, we'll end up somewhere with labeled napkins." Before I could answer, someone knocked on her open door, not a pound this time. 2 sharp taps. Claire turned and all the warmth drained from her face. A man stood in the hallway with wet blonde hair, a charming smile, and eyes that didn't match it. "Hey, Claire," he said. "We need to talk." For 1 second, nobody moved. Daniel stood in Claire's doorway like he belonged there, holding a bouquet of white tulips and wearing the kind of smile men practice in mirrors. Expensive jacket, clean shoes, calm voice. He looked at me, then at Claire. "Well," he said, "you move fast." Claire's hand curled at her side. I wanted to step in front of her. Instead, I remembered what she'd said in the hallway. "I need to know I can choose staying without feeling like I owe you." So I stayed beside her, not ahead of her. Claire noticed. Her eyes flicked to me and something steadied in her face. "Daniel," she said, "you need to leave." His smile tightened. "I drove 4 hours. That was your choice." I was worried. "No," she said. "You were inconvenienced." The tulips lowered slightly. He glanced around the apartment, the fans, the damp towels, the boxes, then gave a soft laugh. "This is what you wanted? A leaking apartment and some guy you met yesterday?" My jaw flexed. Claire took 1 step forward. Not toward him exactly, away from the version of herself that would have apologized. "Ryan isn't the point," she said. "And that's the part you never understood. Me leaving wasn't about finding someone else. It was about finding me." Daniel's eyes hardened just enough that I saw the man under the charm. "Claire, don't be dramatic." She flinched, just barely. But I saw it, and apparently she hated that I saw it because her chin lifted. "I'm not being dramatic," she said. "I'm being done." The hallway went silent except for the hum of the fans. Daniel looked at me again. "You know she does this, right? Makes everything bigger than it is. She gets emotional, then expects someone else to clean up the mess." Claire inhaled sharply. I heard my own voice before I had time to polish it. "I like her mess." Both of them turned to me. I looked at Claire, not him. "For the record." A tiny, stunned laugh escaped her. Daniel's face darkened. "That's cute." "No," Claire said, and there was steel in it now. "What's cute is you thinking I still need your permission to be believed." She walked to the door and held it wider. "Goodbye, Daniel." He stared at her for a long moment. Long enough that the air tightened. Then he set the tulips on the floor like a punishment. "You'll call me when this falls apart," he said. Claire smiled. Not warmly. "No, I won't." She shut the door in his face. For a moment, she just stood there with her palm flat against the wood. I didn't touch her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I waited until she turned around. Her eyes were bright, her mouth trembling with the effort not to cry. "I did that." "You did." I didn't explain. I didn't soften it. I didn't say sorry. "No." A tear slipped down her cheek. Then she laughed, breathless and disbelieving. "I think I'm going to throw up. That feels less victorious. It's growth. Apparently it hurts a little." I opened my arms, but I didn't step forward. Claire crossed the room and came into them like she had made the decision before I offered. I held her while the fans blew warm air around us and the abandoned tulips sat outside her door. After a minute, she mumbled into my chest, "You like my mess?" I said what I said. That was a dangerous line. It was honest. She tilted her face up. "You keep doing that." "What?" "Saying things that make it hard to be cynical." I brushed a tear from her cheek with my thumb. "Sorry." "No, you're not." "No." Her gaze dropped to my mouth, and this time, she kissed me first. It wasn't the careful morning kiss. This one had relief in it, and anger and triumph, and the shaky sweetness of a woman choosing what came next. Her fingers gripped my shirt. Mine slid around her waist, pulling her close enough that I felt her heartbeat against me. When she pulled back, she was smiling, a real smile. "There," she whispered. "Now Ryan is the point." I laughed and she kissed me again. We did not cancel the date. Claire insisted on that with the ferocity of someone who had just discovered she could close doors. "I refuse," she said, standing in my bathroom doorway 2 hours later, "to let Daniel be the most memorable man I see today." I looked up from buttoning my shirt and lost the ability to speak. She wore a green dress that made her eyes look impossible and her hair loose around her shoulders. No armor, no apology, just Claire. Soft and sharp and bright enough to ruin me. "You're staring," she said. "Yes." "Any notes?" "Several, none appropriate for a first date." Her cheeks flushed. "That good?" "That dangerous." She stepped closer and straightened my collar. "You clean up well for a man who flirts with storage systems." "You wore green on purpose." "I did." "Why?" She smiled. "Because you noticed my eyes." I had no defense against that. The restaurant she chose was small and loud, with red candles on the tables and handwritten menus. It should have felt too soon. Instead, sitting across from Claire while she stole fries off my plate and argued that pie was superior to cake, I felt something inside me unclench, not fixed, not healed. Just willing. Halfway through dinner, she caught me looking at her. "What?" she asked. "I'm trying to memorize this." Her fork paused. "Why?" "Because yesterday morning, I thought the best I could hope for was quiet." Claire's expression softened. "And now? Now I'm hoping you order dessert so I have an excuse to stay here longer." She looked down, smiling into her wine glass. That was almost smooth. "Almost?" You hesitated. "I was distracted by the woman stealing my fries." "She sounds charming." "She is." After dinner, we walked home instead of calling a rideshare. The storm had scrubbed the city clean. Streetlights glittered in puddles and the air smelled like wet leaves in summer. Claire slipped her hand into mine halfway up the hill. No emergency this time, no darkness. Just her hand, warm and certain. "You know this is fast," she said. I know. I'm not ready to promise anything huge. I'm not asking." She glanced at me. "But you want to?" I looked at our joined hands. "Yes." Her thumb brushed mine. "Me too." Those two words nearly stopped me in the middle of the sidewalk. She saw it and smiled. "Don't get dramatic." "I would never." "You own a label maker, of course you would." At her door, the tulips were gone. Mark from downstairs had apparently taken them and left a note on Claire's floor that read, "Free sad flowers, waste not." Claire laughed so hard she had to lean against the wall. Then she turned to me, laughter fading into something tender. "Come in," she asked. I did. Her apartment was still half unpacked. The floor fan hummed. Boxes leaned in towers. Nothing about it was perfect. But Claire took my hand and led me to the middle of the room anyway. "No bed," she said. "No couch. First dance instead. There's no music." She reached up, resting both hands on my shoulders. "Then hum." "I don't hum on command." "You do now." So I hummed badly some song I half remembered from nowhere, and she laughed into my neck while we swayed among the boxes. After a while, she grew quiet. "I'm scared," she admitted. I rested my cheek against her hair. "Me too." "You are?" "I'm scared I'll want too much. Scared I'll try to earn being loved instead of just letting it happen." My throat tightened. "Scared you'll wake up and decide I was only safe, not wanted." Claire pulled back. Her eyes searched mine. Then she touched my face with both hands. "Ryan," she said softly, I wanted you before you were safe. The words went straight through me. She kissed me slowly then, like she had all the time in the world to prove it. And when she pulled me toward her borrowed, finally dry mattress on the floor, she smiled against my mouth and whispered, "Stay tonight." My answer was easy. Yes. I stayed. Not because the night demanded it, because Claire asked, because she wanted me there. And for the first time in a long time, I let that be enough. We slept on her mattress on the floor, surrounded by half-open boxes and the low whir of the fan. Nothing rushed. Nothing needed proving. She curled against me with her back to my chest, my arm around her waist, and just before sleep took her, she covered my hand with hers. "Ryan?" she whispered. "Yeah? If I panic tomorrow and pretend I'm extremely casual about this, don't believe me." I smiled into her hair, noted. "And if you panic? I'll probably organize something." "Of course you will." Her fingers slid between mine, then she said so softly I almost missed it, "I'm glad you opened your door." I held her a little closer. "I'm glad you knocked." In the morning, I woke to Claire staring at me. Her chin was propped on her hand, hair a wild mess around her face, one bare shoulder peeking out from beneath the sheet. Sunlight cut across the room and caught the tiny scar in her eyebrow. She looked beautiful in a way that made me ache. "What?" I asked, voice rough. "I'm deciding something." "That sounds ominous." "It is." She leaned closer. "I've decided I like you before coffee." "That's serious." "Don't let it go to your head." "Too late." She smiled, then kissed me slowly, sleepy and warm and certain. Afterward, she rested her forehead against mine. "I still don't know exactly what I'm doing," she said. "Me neither." "That's comforting and horrifying." "We can be confused together." Her thumb brushed the corner of my mouth. "Together sounds nice." So that's what we did. Not perfectly, not magically. Together didn't fix everything overnight. Daniel texted twice. Claire blocked him both times, once with trembling hands, once while eating cereal in my kitchen and declaring it character development. The landlord replaced the bad pipe after Claire threatened to write a review so detailed it would qualify as literature. Mark from downstairs continued appearing at odd moments, usually to report on the emotional humidity of the building. And Claire did panic. On our fourth date, after laughing through an entire terrible mini golf game, she went quiet in the parking lot and told me she was terrified she'd only traded one man's expectations for another's. It hurt to hear. But I was learning not to make pain the enemy of honesty. So I handed her the putter she'd stolen by accident and said, "Then tell me what expectations I'm putting on you." She stared at me. Then she laughed. Then she cried. Then she told me. Some of it was fair. Some of it was fear wearing my face. We sorted through it slowly, sitting on the curb under a blinking neon windmill, while teenagers walked past pretending not to stare. At the end, she leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You're annoyingly patient." I'm actually screaming internally. "I know." She kissed my jaw. "It's one of your better qualities." I had my own panic too. The first time she left a toothbrush at my apartment, I stood in the bathroom staring at it like it was a live grenade. Claire found me there. "Should I name it?" she asked. I looked at her. "What?" "The toothbrush. You seem emotionally involved." I laughed, but it came out strained. She took my hand. "Too much?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to be the easy man, the healed man, the man who didn't flinch at small domestic evidence of being chosen. Instead, I said, "A little." Her face didn't close. She just nodded. "Okay. You're not mad." "No." She squeezed my hand. "I don't want to move into your life like a hostile takeover." I exhaled. "But," she added, "I do want drawer space eventually." Eventually? Eventually? What size drawer are we discussing? There he is. She grinned. My romantic inventory manager. I pulled her close and kissed her until she laughed against my mouth. 6 months later, Claire's apartment no longer smelled like cardboard and wet wood. It smelled like basil from the plant on her windowsill, vanilla candles, and the coffee she now admitted was better than gas station coffee, though she claimed she missed the danger. Her once dead houseplant had not survived, but we gave it a funeral in a takeout container and replaced it with a fern named Mark. He's dramatic and thrives in humidity, Claire said. It fits. By then, we had a rhythm. Friday nights were hers to plan, which meant art shows, taco trucks, bookstore readings, and once, inexplicably, a pottery class where my bowl looked like it had suffered a personal tragedy. Sunday mornings were mine, which meant pancakes, long walks, and furniture shopping we both pretended it was casual. Then one rainy Thursday night, almost exactly a year after she moved in, Claire knocked on my door again. I opened it to find her barefoot in the hallway holding a box. This one was labeled kitchen/definitely taxes. My heart stopped. She lifted her chin, trying and failing to look composed. So, she said, I have a question. I leaned against the doorframe, the same way I had the first day. Either ask or pretend you weren't emotionally weaponizing office supplies. Her mouth twitched. I got a notice that my lease is up in 30 days. I know. And my apartment is fine now. It is. And I am perfectly capable of living alone. You are. She swallowed. But I don't want to. There it was. No storm, no flood, no fear forcing the words out. Just Claire choosing. My chest filled so full I could barely breathe. What exactly are you asking? I said, because I needed to hear it. She stepped closer, box in her arms, eyes bright. Is there room in your bed? I smiled, but my voice came out rough. Yes. She arched an eyebrow. Conditions? I reached for the box, set it carefully inside my doorway, then took her face in my hands. Yes, I said. Only if you don't leave tomorrow. Claire's laugh broke into a kiss. She kissed me in the hallway where it started, under the old flickering light with rain tapping against the windows, and our doors open on either side of us. Then she whispered, I'm not leaving. By the following spring, there were 2 toothbrushes in my bathroom, her green dress in my closet, my label maker in a drawer she had deliberately labeled nerd equipment, and a fern named Mark flourishing in the window. Our bed was not too big anymore. Some mornings I woke up before her and watched sunlight move across her face. Sometimes she'd catch me and mumble, creepy but affectionate, before pulling me back under the covers. And every time I thought about that first night, a soaked mattress, a dead plant, a woman brave enough to ask for a place to rest and brave enough to stay when I asked her to. The room in my bed had never been the real question. The real question was whether there was room in my life for love again. Claire answered it by reaching for my hand in the dark, and I answered it by holding on. What would you have done if your brand new neighbor asked if there was room in your bed, but you already knew you didn't want her to leave tomorrow? Have you ever experienced something similar? Meeting someone at the strangest possible moment and feeling your whole life shift? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.